In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look here at some tropics. There is Tropical Storm Oscar out there in the Atlantic. We're going to be diving into some upcoming cold fronts, some higher precipitation cold fronts as well. So the east, they've been very, very quiet for multiple months now. Likely going to be seeing that basically flipping into the more active direction. Still slightly below average as far as precipitation, but should be a big increase from what we've been seeing, which is basically nothing, as you likely know. Let's take a look here at the tropics real quickly, and we do have Oscar. I'm pre-making this video. I have a lot going on today from the time you're hearing this, but we do expect Oscar to basically stay out to sea, thankfully, for at least the U.S. East Coast. But the coastal areas of Canada here, Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, still need to be on pretty high alert. This is not expected to be a major system by any means for these folks, but it could be equivalent to a pretty strong nor'easter. So we're going to be watching for some heavier rainfall and some stronger winds. Nothing too crazy though. As we just take a look at the GFS model's opinion, we can see that this one actually takes Oscar a little bit further eastward, maybe impacting Nova Scotia here, or better yet, Newfoundland. However, a little bit further east for Nova Scotia. Definitely still some time for this to trend back westward and perhaps impact these areas. However, right now, these GFS model members are showing a much further east solution, even than what the European model is showing. We do have a couple models flirting with something in the central Gulf of Mexico, perhaps hitting the Gulf Coast, except, this is about 30 members we're looking at here, maybe even 40, and we only have like one or two showing a solution along these lines. So that is a relatively low odd scenario there. Let's take a look at the GFS model overall, and we're actually going to be using this model through the video, believe it or not. So we're going to be looking at the American model. And as you can see, by the time we're reaching this afternoon on Tuesday, October 22nd, we have a low here south of the Hudson Bay. And this has been a frequent pattern shift that we've been seeing from time to time, where a dragging cold front underneath a Hudson Bay low will bring about some storminess here to the Midwest, and with it, some cooler air. I don't want to say too cold because it's not going to be anything massive, especially in this case. However, definitely taking us from a warmer, more mild pattern back into a seasonal, if not a little bit colder than what's typical pattern. Let's take a look at what happens for tomorrow from the time you're watching this video, Wednesday on October 23rd. What we see here is, again, we've been talking about this, but watch for the dips, okay? It doesn't have to be blue with snowfall to mean cold. We see these dips, and this is going to mean basically colder air is in these areas than the western counterparts, and we see a pretty big dip there for the southeast as well. So this is indicative of cooler air in the east, and then kind of these bumps and ridges here is going to be where we experience the warmer weather than the western counterparts. So we see a lot of that happening throughout the Rockies and Plains by the time we're reaching Wednesday. A bit of a trough out west for the west coast as well, as you can see for some of those areas. So that is the overall kind of jet stream pattern by Wednesday. Thursday, it's a lot of the same. You also typically in meteorology will kind of find the middle here of the trough, and that's kind of the axis that we're working with. It's a little bit of a wobble here, but we see the coldest air is along the U.S. East Coast by this point, and the warmest air is something like this along kind of the Midwest up through the Great Lakes, and even what we just mentioned, the Hudson Bay. Not a lot of activity to discuss yet, and that's what things have really been like for days now. As you can see, overnight Thursday into Friday, though, we get this huge kind of splash of storminess across the Midwest and Great Lakes, which is going to be well welcomed by these areas, I'm sure. Just seeing some precipitation is going to be really a good thing. By Saturday afternoon, we do have showers around for these eastern areas throughout some of the lower Midwest and Ohio Valley into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and even for some of the deeper south areas. So some storms, and again, watch these kind of ridge shapes here. We definitely have a lot of that going on out west, all the way up. And then we have kind of this troughing action here in the east on a lot of these areas. So definitely still cooler in the east. We get another kind of round of that for Saturday. Even Sunday, it looks the same way. The east is a little cooler. The west is a little warmer, certainly very warm by that point. And then we get into this very intense pattern by Tuesday on the 29th here. We do have some low pressure spread around for Colorado and then for central Canada. So we have this kind of stacked column of storms out west. So some snowfall for the Rockies and even for central Canada as well. But again, a very intense ridge here for a lot of these Midwest areas and even extending into central Canada here, as you can see. Very intense ridge there. But look at this troughing motion over the east. So what we call this is kind of a backdoor cold front. It's not going to be intense by any means, but we do have some sinking cold air action along the east coast with this very vigorous warm air action across the central states and a big trough out west. So what we end up with is something like this actually, which is a highly unusual pattern where there's some cooler air able to enter in through the east coast, more central areas seeing the warmth, and then very cool, the most intense trough by far around the nation is going to be out west by this early next week time frame, actually a week from today. And as you can see, snowfall happening for Nevada, Utah, Colorado, or better yet, Wyoming. So we start to get that Rocky Mountain snowfall action kind of starting back up. By Wednesday on October 30th, we have a very strong Hudson Bay low. Cold front extending down the Great Lakes here, bringing precipitation to some of these areas along eastern Canada and maybe extending down into the Great Lakes area. We do have this ridge now starting to enter into more of the eastern areas. A little bit of a messy pattern overall. By Thursday afternoon on the 31st, this will be Halloween day, by the way. We do see the upper Midwest experiencing some showers here, some snowfall for the Northwest in particular, Cascades, Northern Rockies here getting some heavy snowfall. So again, these areas continuing to see a very snowy look. The GFS model tends to be wild, by the way, in the long range. I'm going to refresh this because we get a couple extra hours here. However, take this with a grain of salt, but we do see a very intense looking tropical system between Jamaica and Cuba. And this model is going to want to take this northward, which would be a little bit startling for these East Coast areas. So we will watch this. However, this is a very long range projection on only one model. So take it with a really strong grain of salt, I would say. By this point, the overall jet stream look is a ridge in the west, trough over more of the central areas, and then a ridge for the east here. So we see this sinking action for these areas, more of a ridge look in the west, and then also the east seeing a really decent ridge here by this point. This is, again, sometime between November 1st and 2nd. As we move towards Saturday on November 2nd, during more of the midday, we see a low south of the Hudson Bay, high precipitation cold front underneath. So again, precipitation again for these areas here, and some cooler air sinking down, moving eastward behind it. Let's just take this a step further towards Sunday on the 3rd, and we get this high precipitation cold front along the eastern states, so more rainfall on the way. Clearly, again, using this kind of ridging strategy, we see a lot of that happening out west, and then a very intense trough look here over a lot of the east. So definitely cooler in the east by this point. For these areas, the axis again is going to be something like this. So that is kind of swinging around, and we see that a lot of this precipitation in the east, which is very common for these kind of cool down looks. We do see this tropical cyclone now off the north end of Cuba, very intense looking, but again, grain of salt, guys. This is probably going to be gone on the next model run. We do see it over the Bahamas for Monday on the 4th here. Still a very strong trough look here in the east with overall a ridge over the central states. And then by the time we reach Tuesday the 5th, actually this storm just barges right into the east coast here, straight into the Outer Banks. Definitely unusual for early November. You guys know me. I'll never call anything impossible, but this is typical GFS stuff here. I mean, I really just have to say it. I'm definitely doubtful about this one, but we will nevertheless discuss it. And, you know, hey, maybe it'll be here on future model runs. Hopefully not, but that would be interesting, especially getting that mixed precipitation here over the Appalachian Mountain Range, getting kind of like a late season tropical cyclone with wintry weather vibe, which is just a very unusual storm. Not impossible, but unusual. We even get snowfall here for some of the Smoky Mountains here on November 6th from this very intense tropical cyclone. Outlandish is a great way to put that. And then eventually it moves off the East Coast again near New England. So just overall not a very realistic look. Let's refresh this one as well. And as we can see on the total precipitation, you get a ton here over the east because of that projected tropical cyclone that we get. But if we exclude that, which I would recommend paying much more attention to this as opposed to this. So let's just do this. And over the next about 15 days minus the tropical cyclone, we do get a pretty decent amount here in the east, at least something for most areas in here. Probably half an inch to an inch at least in most of those blue areas and yellow. So it's scattered around. I mean, it's not the most consistently very rainy pattern I've ever seen, but it's certainly a pretty considerable step up from what we've been seeing, which is good news for many areas. Pacific Northwest seeing high activity. We saw yesterday in yesterday's video, the European model was agreeing with that. So I would certainly say that's something to watch for. Here is the anomalies. The precipitation anomaly still below average here in the east, but again, seeing something which is a lot more than what we have been seeing. Some areas to watch for above average activity would be the Pacific Northwest, Central Rockies, and then the upper Midwest here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the total snowfall. I want to actually take this to the end out of curiosity because we do get about a foot over the Smoky Mountains from that strange tropical cyclone. Again, totally fantasy land here. I would disregard this almost, and you guys know I almost never say that, but I would pretty much disregard that. The Cascades here in Nevada and Rockies get their fair share of snowfall, at least a few inches in each mountain range, but the Cascades seeing 2-3 feet perhaps, and then the Rocky Mountains, a lot of areas seeing 1 to 2 feet. So a decent amount of snowfall coming for these areas. The northern tip of Minnesota seeing a few inches perhaps, at least a dusting, and then some of the mountainous northeast seeing some flakes flying as well. The temperature pattern, let's watch it. We get cold front number 1 coming very soon. Here's Wednesday the 23rd, Thursday the 24th. Cooler air throughout the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast here. It's going to feel like a nice little brisk fall cool down. And that lasts a couple days. Here's Friday the 25th, and then we start to see it warm up for about a day here on later on the 25th into the 26th. But here comes Sunday the 27th, and once again we have another cool down here for the east, northeast, mid-Atlantic, even to the southeast, with a massive ridge over the central and western states. We see that cold air last on the east coast for a few days there, all the way through kind of like the Tuesday the 29th time frame when it finally comes to an end. We have seen the east coast kind of lingering with these cool downs, so I'd say that's a pretty realistic look. This is absolutely crazy right here, guys, for Tuesday the 29th. If this comes true, this would be almost a heat wave in late October for these areas. That is 20 to 35 degrees above average for the upper Midwest. So, even if your average temperature is 75, I mean, you are seeing surging temperatures into the very, very hot territory. Even if you're in the 60s on average, you're going to be looking at likely upper 80s, 90s perhaps, if this was to verify, which is just insane for those areas. So keep that in mind. That lasts a little bit. We do see another cool down here for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time frame along the east, and that is the end of the model run. Well, actually, it's not. I'll refresh it. We get a little further here. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and we continue to see that cooler air along the east. So very interesting. Here's the CFS model. We'll take a long range look real quickly. This is the 22nd through the 27th. Overall, cooler out west, warmer in the central states, pretty neutral along the east coast. As we take a look at the 27th through the 1st of November, we get a cooler look here along the eastern seaboard, cooler look across the western seaboard, and then very warm across the central, a lot like what the GFS model was just suggesting. Here's the 1st through the 6th, colder in the west, warmer in the east, so everything kind of moves eastward. Here's the 6th through the 11th, not a lot of change there. But here comes the 11th through the 16th, and we once again enter into a cooler pattern in the east with a cooler pattern in the west. And then again, the central states a lot warmer. Here's the 16th through the 21st, cooler across the board kind of. 21st through the 26th, same story. 26th through the 1st of December, we get a little bit of a neutral pattern. I'll do this for neutral. Out west with clearly an Arctic pattern in the east. We can tell that this is originating from Canada there. Very interesting. And then here is the 30th through the 5th, and we continue to see a colder east within now a warmer west. Very interesting. Anyway, guys, I would discuss the tropics, but basically Oscar is the only thing out there, so there's nothing else to really talk about in that regard. That is headed northward. We will have more information for coastal Canada as we draw closer to the storm. Keep that in mind. That's it for this video, guys. Be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.